welcome to the Ghosts of Harrenhal. My name is Simon.
And I'm McKelly.
Thank you for joining us for episode 5 of our chapter-by-chapter book review of A Song of Ice and Fire series by George R.R. Martin. Today we're discussing chapter 4 of A Game of Thrones, Eddard 1. We'll summarise the chapter, discuss what we think, provide some non-spoiler background, and discuss comparisons with the TV show. How you doing?
Good.
Yeah?
Did you have a good week?
Oh, not too bad.
Haven't seen you much since the last time we recorded.
No. No. I've been busy.
Yes,
I've been busy.
You are busy.
Yeah. All right, let's start with our usual summary of the chapter, McKelly.
Okay. King Robert Baratheon and his entourage have finally arrived at Winterfell, and it seems as though King Robert is nearly unrecognizable to his old friend Ned. He's gained some serious weight since Ned last saw him 9 years ago, when the duo paired up to crush the Greyjoy Rebellion. After formal introductions between the royal family and the Starks, Robert insists Ned take him directly to the crypt to pay respects to Lyanna Stark, his original betrothed. Queen Cersei tries to reason with Robert that it's been a long journey and the dead can wait, but Robert will not hear it. While in the crypt, we see how much both Robert and Ned love and miss Ned's younger sister Lyanna. We also learn some specifics about how Ned's brother Brandon died, and of the duel between Rhaegar and Robert at the Fort of the Trident, and more info on Jon Arryn's sudden death. It seems that Jon was the picture of health one day and dead 2 weeks later from some terrible ailment. Robert reveals that Lysa Arryn took her young son Robert back to the Eyrie against her king's wishes, and that King Robert intends young Robert to be fostered by Tywin Lannister and Casterly Rock, much to Ned's displeasure. Robert finally gets to the point of his visit. He asks Ned to be his Hand of the King. Ned anticipated that, but needs to think on the answer. Robert then follows that up with a marriage proposal between his son Joffrey and Ned's daughter Sansa.
Yes. So Lyanna Stark is Ned's sister, right?
Yes.
That's who she is.
Younger
So
sister.
That's who Robert clearly still holds a candle for.
He
after
seems
all these
to.
years.
Yes.
So this is the first time we've circled back to revisit characters that we've met before. And I would like to apologise to Garrett of the Night's Watch, because he was in 2 chapters. He was the first person to be in 2 chapters.
Right.
But
he's not going to be in anymore,
no,
I'm afraid.
not. Yeah.
Big party has arrived.
It's a big party, yeah. I mean, it seems...
Heck, the 40 horses that pulled the wheelhouse.
It must be a hefty wheelhouse.
That'd be tough to accommodate.
A wheelhouse that can't get through the gates of castles that it visits. Seems an unnecessarily large wheelhouse.
Well, I believe, as Caitlin says, where the king goes, the kingdom follows, or something along those lines.
Yeah. And the gain of weight is not just the crown. Presumably, it's some of the
right. Or the beard.
Yeah.
Yes, and if there was any doubt of what the source of contention and concern and foreboding that the characters had been feeling with the stag antler and the dead direwolf, the crowned stag banners flying everywhere as Robert arrives, should
reinforce that.
Yes, I think we know now why there was concern.
Yeah. So Robert's gotten fat.
He has.
I mean, I sympathise.
Yeah, it happens to us all. So I've got a British question for you.
I know where you're going with this. I know where you're going with this.
How much is a stone?
Yes.
I've wondered that. I should have looked it up. I've always wondered how much a stone is.
Stone is 14 pounds. It's not that complicated.
Pounds, okay.
You're the people who still have pounds and ounces.
True. But we should throw a stone in there from time to time, I guess.
Why not?
So.
I've got to say, I've lived here long enough now that I actually find weights like 150 pounds to be as comprehensible as 10 stone 10.
10 stone 10.
But there was a long time when I was like, why don't you just say 10 stone 10? That's much more understandable. Because that's 10 stone plus 10 pounds, you know?
Okay, yeah, that
would make a lot of sense. So how many...
It's more interesting, that's for
sure.
Yeah,
he's gained 8 stone. That's a lot.
In 9 years since Ned last saw him.
That's an extra 120 pounds.
I'm glad you did the math for me.
Yeah.
I was trying to do it in my head, and I thought, like most math instances, I let you do it for me.
He is 6'6" though, so I mean, and 6'6", and he was a muscled Adonis.
Right. Yeah. 15 years ago,
120 pounds on top
fancy.
of that. He might not look that fat. I mean, he might just be like just fat. Not really fat. I mean, if I gained 120 pounds, that'd be like terrifying. But if I was 6'6" and broad, you can carry an extra 120 pounds without looking quite so.
Although the way Ned describes him, it seems like he's not wearing it well. He's hiding it with the beard, apparently. The royal jowls, I think he wears it. Something that made me laugh when I was reading is Ned refers to the smell of leather and blood clung to him like perfume back during the Greyjoy Rebellion. Yeah. And now perfume clung to him like perfume. That made me laugh.
It's humour. So they reference how large the north is, that's sparse population, but it is a large part, basically the same size as the rest of the Seven Kingdoms.
Pretty close. Yeah. It's big compared to the rest. Yeah.
Robert doesn't like the weather.
No, he does not care for summer snows, which I got to side with him on that.
Yeah, nobody really wants that, but hey, if you've had a 9-year summer, which I believe they're in the middle of, you might long for snow at that point.
Yes, I feel like we've been in the middle of a 9-year summer.
It does feel like it, yeah.
We do get some very vivid descriptions of life in the South from Robert. He goes on and on, especially about the women, but also the wine and the food.
Yeah, he does go on about it. I would like to say that it is from the perspective of the king. Life in the South for the king is the wine, the food, the women.
Yes.
For the rest of us, it might be more flea-bottomed.
We still have day jobs.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes. Of course, he mentions that everyone is fat and drunk and rich. Again, from the perspective of the king.
You're right. The people bringing him the wine aren't any of those things.
It might explain his expanded waistline and his royal jowls.
Rather.
But things get serious when they get down there. Right as they arrive. Before he even goes to hit the head.
Perhaps there's facilities in the wheelhouse. It's large enough.
That's true.
It just leaves a trail behind it.
Horses. There's 40 horses. There's plenty of things being left in the...
Exactly, yeah.
Imagine the King's Road now.
Yes, he demands to see Lyanna's tomb
hops out, says, says, Ned, good to see ya. Let's go to the crypt.
So is this his first visit to Winterfell since she died?
It seems like it.
It probably is, isn't it? Because they won the crown down on the Trident and then probably went to King's Landing and he's never been back. Yeah.
He's been busy.
So this is the first time seeing her too.
Yeah. He also spurned Cersei to visit his ex.
Yes, what he did to his wife was unconscionable, just a little strong, because I don't think she's necessarily the nicest wife, but it was slap in the face, let's be honest. It's not nice.
Often a not well received move to spurn your wife for your ex. That rarely leads to positive things.
Alive or dead.
Right.
Yeah. So things got serious at Lyanna's tomb. He's clearly still very in love with her.
Yes, he was moved. There's a lot of tenderness and reverence, which seems to be a departure from his normal character that we got a glimpse of.
Yeah, definitely. And clearly he doesn't feel the same way about his wife that he feels about his...
Yes. Based on what we've seen, he clearly doesn't have equal feelings. Ned says, well, I think he's thinking, he doesn't say it, that he loved her with all his heart and Robert loved her more. So
bigger heart, presumably.
True.
Big fella. So Robert's still not exactly forgiven the Targaryens, it seems.
No.
He completely blames them for her death. Although the situation of her death is not completely made clear.
No, it's not. It's very vague.
She dies. It does mention a fever, so that's what Ned says of her death. The fever had taken her voice and she was only whispering. But
so that leads, unless there's biological warfare going on, someone dying of a fever, you could have hard time blaming it on someone else. So something else has happened.
Well,
there's
the flip side of that being she caught the fever while a hostage of the Targaryens.
Right. Okay.
So you blame the Targaryens for that. So he totally blames Rhaegar. Wants to kill Rhaegar every night in his dreams.
Yes. And that Rhaegar is the same Rhaegar from the previous chapter. Just to make that clear, he's the older brother of Viserys and Dany. And I really love the battle scene they describe when Rhaegar and Robert met at the ford of the Trident. It was really, really well done. It
kind of reminds me of in the Lord of the Rings movies. One of the movies starts with probably the second movie, I would guess, with Isildur cutting the ring from Sauron's finger.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that scene sort of reminds me of that. Sort of like the battles of today are kind of like a pale shadow of what the battles used to be.
Right.
It used to be
One
gods
on
amongst
one.
men
Yeah.
fighting to the death kind of thing. So yeah, we learned that Ned was with Lyanna when she died.
Yes.
So
And he's suffered a lot at the hands of the Targaryens. He's arguably had more loss than Robert.
yes, because he lost Lyanna too, but he also lost father and brother.
Yes. We get a taste of Ned and Robert's relationship, what they mean to each other. Clearly, Robert wants Ned to loosen up and be his bro. But he says, if I hear your grace one more time, I'll have your head on a spike. We're more to each other than that. But Ned is nothing if not a rule follower. He's got to know this.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. You got to know this.
Like, know your audience.
Ned hasn't just developed this recently.
Right.
This is Ned to the core of his being. You know?
His last name's not Stark for nothing.
Exactly. Yeah. The Winterfell crypts are nice. There was interesting description of the way the shadows shifted as they moved along with the torches, which is how it would be, and it would be a little bit freaky.
It gives kind of a spooky vibe. Iron long swords laid across the laps of each Lord of Winterfell to keep vengeful spirits in the crypts, and some of those ancient ones
rusted away.
And he's wondering, does that mean that the spirits can get out and roam Winterfell?
And it's interesting that he perceives those ancestors as being like much more rigid and hard than he.
Right. Yeah.
He was like
the most rigid.
He sees because of course they were kings of the North, not just lords of the North. So
right.
I mean, he sort of like I think he thinks that they were a greater version of the Starks than he is.
So I think what he's getting at is parties at Winterfell were not exactly full of fun and enjoyment. And I liked the reference to past Lyanna's crypt. The tombs were empty and unsealed, black holes waiting for him and his children. That's
that it unsettled him. And it would be unsettling to have that. Yeah.
Did they get to pick them out ahead of time?
I think they'd probably just work from front to back. So you get the next one. Yeah. Basically, you get what you get.
Good point.
So Ned's father and brother died at the hands of King Aerys. Brandon was strangled while his father watched.
Ouch. That's gosh.
Not ideal.
You had asked in episode 3. You had asked what age we thought that Ned and Robert were.
We did,
and we can kind of put it together based on some ages we got in this chapter. Brandon was age 20. Lyanna was age 16. Ned is the middle child between the two of them. So we were right. We said mid to late teens. Yeah. So it's about that.
And I think Robert's the same age as Ned, roughly. Yeah.
So we're assuming.
So Brandon was supposed to marry Catelyn and inherit Winterfell. So Catelyn was destined to be the Lady of Winterfell, but she just changed husband once Brandon was...
Interestingly, Ned just kind of, because of the misfortune, walked into his brother's life. He got his title, became Lord of Winterfell, and married the woman that Brandon was betrothed to. That's
because that kind of marriage would not be one of love anyway. It would be arranged to seal the deal between the two houses. So
that must affect him, at least early on, in some ways, that he's walking into his dead brother's life, basically, just picking up where he left off.
Probably didn't make him any warmer and fuzzier.
No.
Although, compared to the ancestors, obviously.
Right. He's the life of the party.
Soft and child of summer.
Well, he did give in to the direwolves.
He did.
Apparently, those ancestors
would have spit roasted them. We get a reference to the Greyjoy's rebellion of 7 years earlier. So that's since Robert became king. There was a rebellion where
9 years.
Oh, was it 9 years?
I think it's
I apologize.
It's one of the two.
But still, since Robert became king, the Iron Islands tried to break away and claim themselves to be the kings of the Iron Islands. It seems that Ned and Robert went and put it down.
They did
very effectively.
Yes.
And one of the outcomes of that is Theon, who we met in the chapter 1.
Yes, he was
taken as
light-hearted, laughing, kicking poor Garrett's head away from him. Boy,
he was taken as ward/hostage to Winterfell.
It seems like Ned has treated him well, though. It's not
given what a smart mouth he was.
Right.
I mean, if you're really holding him as a prisoner, you wouldn't let him get away with that kind of flippancy, I would think. Yeah. But I think this was kind of common in this era, if you map it onto our world, that this kind of sharing of your children to help cement alliances, but also to keep alliances straight was done. So even though there's reasons for animosity between the two houses, they treat the kid fine, and he seems to be enjoying himself. Yeah.
Be educated along with his children.
Yeah.
Or you assume, based on the way he was treated at Poor Garrett's beheading, he seems to just be one of the kids.
Yeah, possibly slightly higher on the social echelon than Jon.
Right? Yeah. True. Good point. So the Jon Arryn and family.
Yeah.
We get a little bit about them. Apparently his death was quick but unexplained. And now there's a 6-year-old as Lord of the Eyrie. Not only a 6-year-old, but a sickly 6-year-old.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's what's going on with the Arryn family. They've gone back to, which we already knew.
Yeah.
We knew in Chapter 2 that they'd gone back to the Eyrie. And now Robert says that was against his wishes, and it's not good to go against the wishes of the king. So
who does Ned suggest that they could foster Robin instead of Tywin Lannister?
He offers to.
Oh, he offers to.
Yep,
but Robert doesn't want that because that would be a slight to the Lannisters.
Yes,
so he's married to them.
Yeah, which he points out. He says, "I don't care about hurting the pride of a Lannister," and he's like, "That's because you're not married to a Lannister." Yes. Yeah, but clearly fostering is a common thing done in Westeros.
Yeah,
that's where Ned and Robert met.
Which you can see in this case why it would be valuable, because Robin, he doesn't have his father anymore, but he needs to be taught how to be Lord of the Eyrie and whatever else.
Warden of the East, which he has stripped from him for the moment. Robert has stripped from.
And going to a house with a Lord,
the Warden of the West,
Lord of the North.
Yeah. I was
Warden
thinking.
of the North. Warden of the North.
He is the Warden of the North, and Tywin Lannister is the
Warden
of the West.
I was thinking,
either way, he's going to a warden's house.
Exactly. So he'll learn to do what he needs to do there.
Yes.
Yeah. So we get to the crux of the visit.
Yep.
Robert wants Ned as his hand.
That he does. I guess everyone saw that coming.
Yeah.
He wasn't going to ride north just to say, "Man, I'm so upset about Jon." So.
I wanted to see snow. It's been forever.
Yeah, it's definitely the most important for plot and story. Whole
decent self-awareness by Robert that he recognizes that he's surrounded by flatterers and
liars and fools.
Yeah,
certainly
needs someone who can talk straight to him like Ned clearly will.
And
Ned's not capable of not.
Right. That's what I was just about to say. I think Ned would make a fantastic Hand of the King, especially for such a loose, fly by the seat of his pants king such as Robert.
Yeah, they would be a good combination.
Yeah, but Ned, it's a huge opportunity for Ned. So much power, but it takes him away from where he wants to be. He's Warden of the North. He's a Stark. There's always a Stark in Winterfell. He wants to be in the North. That's where he belongs. And winter is coming. Yeah. So how could he leave?
Heading south might be the thing to do, to be honest.
And for everyone but a Stark. This is what they've been waiting for.
Yeah.
We told you.
Yeah. So tempering the self-awareness, I mean, there's also the bone idleness. I think Robert wants Ned to do all the work.
Yes, so he can party. Yeah. He literally says that. If I wanted to honor you, I'd let you retire, but I plan on making you run the whole show.
And Stark, I think it says literally that he was filled with a terrible sense of foreboding, even though he saw it coming.
Right.
Hearing the words gave him the sense of foreboding.
Probably gave him the chills.
Yeah,
which is funny, we've had the dead direwolf with the stag antler in the throat. We've had the others, and now the king asks him to go south with him. And now
this is what makes
he's like, wait a second,
that's creepy. So they agree that Joffrey and Sansa will marry.
Yes.
She's only 12, is that right? So they said a couple more years. Yeah,
she's somewhere around that.
But that would make her Queen of Westeros one day.
Yes, I'm sure she won't be upset about that.
Well, we don't really know what Sansa's character is yet.
True.
She might be fiercely independent tomboy.
Right, that's
she
possible.
Won't want that.
She will not.
But she might be very happy with it.
She might enjoy being the Queen of Westeros someday.
I was thinking about the casting in the TV show of the kids and how the sisters, Arya and Sansa, ended up growing up to be young women. And they couldn't have been more physically different.
Could not. Could not.
They're both great choices in their own way, but They were not the same.
Right.
They did not look like sisters.
No, not at all.
They didn't really right at the start, but then they just diverged.
They just kept going in opposite directions. So Robert, he comes across a bit boorish and in need of some fatherly direction and discipline.
Yeah.
He's a big kid. Probably not the best choice for king.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to do it again, maybe. I feel like maybe Ned has a more personality suited to rule than Robert.
Yeah, clearly. But I mean, Robert was 6'6" and chiseled and
could wield a warhammer that Ned could barely lift.
so telling him you don't want him to be king might have been difficult at that moment.
And it's not like Ned is a little man. He's a big guy.
Yeah, and his casual thoughtlessness towards his wife can't bode well for their long-term happiness.
No,
it seems.
On and on about the women in the South. That's not very.
He wasn't
king-like.
doing that in front of her.
Right.
At least he did say, "I'm off to see my dead lover."
Yes, right
in front of her.
Yep, and he at least once, if not more than once, says, "The others take my wife."
Uh-huh. Well, he's brought her to the right place.
Right. Yeah. Maybe when Ned mentions that he needs to see the wall, maybe.
Yeah. Cersei, come with me.
Yeah.
Look what's over here. So comparing with the TV show, this is very, very close.
We're still pretty close.
Yeah,
for a while.
Yeah,
we're going to be pretty close.
But brushes over the children. We haven't met the children yet. It just says they get introduced to one another, sort of thing. But in the show, we've already met them, so they get a little more airtime, and get a little more color. But it's this whole chapter is well reproduced in the show.
Yeah, that's going to go on for a bit.
Yeah, you're right. We were talking about this earlier. That throughout this probably the first half of this book, it should be pretty well reproduced. Yeah. But I bet we'll find chapters that just get dropped though.
True.
Before too long.
Yeah.
Just because they're treading water. So background.
Yeah, let's do some background. So we talked about the Greyjoys a little bit in the background of last week's chapter. What this is for. So chapter 3. So now we get reference in this chapter to the Greyjoy Rebellion. So let's talk a little bit about that. So Balon Greyjoy, the self-styled king of the Iron Islands, tried to break away from the rule of the Seven Kingdoms in an attempt to reestablish a former way of life for his people that was lost 300 years ago when Aegon the Conqueror took up rule over all of Westeros.
Yeah, and so we mentioned, we understand why Theon is in Winterfell now.
Yep.
We also get the sense of why Viserys believed the Greyjoys would be one of the houses that would support them.
Yes.
The Greyjoys clearly have an axe to grind with the current regime.
I believe he's right in
that
regard.
I believe so too. Although, given that they broke away they didn't try to steal the Iron Throne, they tried to break away and form their own kingdom.
Right, yeah.
That's not really what Viserys wants.
I doubt he would be thrilled with that either.
But they are an ocean-going family, and so that could be useful because, if you remember, the narrow sea was not that narrow. Not that wide, but not that narrow.
Yeah.
So they do need boats to get back.
Good point.
We learned a little bit about the Kingsguard. They're known as White Cloaks. They're the knights who protect the king at all times, usually made up of the best of knights, kind of like the Secret Service of Westeros. It's a lifetime appointment, and much like the Night's Watch, they give up all claims to lands they can't marry and are forbidden to father children.
They are. The idea of white cloaks, that seems like the laundry people must just be furious with that decision. How do you keep those cloaks so white all the time?
That's a good point.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
But I mean, been brown cloaks?
Yeah.
It's a muddy place. They don't have a lot of paved streets.
And if it's anything like the Secret Service, they're like in the strip joints in Flea Bottom all the time, getting them filthy.
So this one might seem a little off the wall, but I personally wondered about this when I was rereading the chapter. So I went and looked up the difference between a free rider and sellsword.
Were they both mentioned?
They were both mentioned. They were both mentioned in chapter 2.
Oh.
Caitlin mentions...
Been bugging you ever since.
I think that's when I went and looked it up, actually. Caitlin mentions... Ned says, how many are coming, do you think? And she mentions free riders and sellswords. I believe.
I see.
That was a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
So sellswords, they're mercenaries that fight for pay, usually veterans of wars. They may or may not have a horse. Free riders, obviously by their name, must have a horse of some kind.
Unless they're really free riders.
little stick. Stick between the legs.
2 halves of a coconut.
Mostly, they're just there for room and board, hoping to catch the favor of some lord or knight, often inexperienced young men.
That's actually very fascinating. Thank you for bringing that up, Kelly. Often I sneer at the things you bring up, but this one, I grant you, was worth learning about.
It was worth the minute it took.
Thank you. And we got a mention of Howland Reed.
We did, yeah.
For the first time you want
the
to talk
little
about
Cranog
him.
man, he called him.
Yeah, what does that mean exactly? This is like...
That's the name of the people that live in the neck.
I see. They're known as Crannog men.
I believe they
I
refer to them as.
I think that's right
Cranog
too.
men.
So you talk about Howland Reed.
Okay.
You know more about him than I do.
He's the Lord of Greywater Watch. He's the head of House Reed, which would make sense, being that his last name is Reed. He leads the Cranog men of the Neck, and he owes fealty to Ned, which would be why he was around when Ned was with Lyanna as she died.
Oh, that's right. That's where he gets mentioned in this chapter.
Yes,
isn't it?
he was with him when Lyanna was dying. So the Neck, getting a little bit off of Howland Reed here, but the Neck is an important geographical area of Westeros. It separates the north from the other 6 kingdoms, and it's full of bogs and swamps, and it forms a natural barrier which makes it difficult to lead large forces through it. So, it's kind of it's a choking point, hence the name, the Neck. It's a narrowing of the land, and it's just not a good place to lead a
perfect sense. So
force through.
Yeah. Onto pedantry. I couldn't see anything in this one. I'm sorry. I really was looking forward to pedantry corner, but it's been a bit of a dud. So excitingly, we have some mail.
Yes, we do.
Why don't you tell us what we got?
All right. I like the way it's signed off, Sleepless in Sunspear. That's very clever.
Nice.
Of course, it then underneath says, "Totally not your friend Dan."
Well, yeah. I suspect it is.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
The email address kind of...
It being Dan's email address, yeah.
kind of tipped it off.
Yeah.
So, we believe our friend Dan, even though he says it's not our friend Dan. So, I'll read some of the email. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's kind of long, but I'll give you some of it. It starts, "In your second episode, McKelly mentioned that he reads the narrative with an internal English accent. Dan says, I do this all the time too, and I think a lot of Americans do the same. So why? Is it because American readers tend to think of fantasy as hearkening back to the mythical and patently English past due to pioneers of the genre, like Tolkien, Lewis, and Chesterton?"
Well, that is a good question. But I feel that I am not the expert here. Because I read it with an internal English accent because that's my internal voice.
That's true. I guess you don't really have much to say about it.
I certainly didn't notice I was hamming it up while I was reading it. So you're on your own here.
Well, my take on it is that American history, the current American history, only goes back a few hundred years. So anything dealing with medieval type things, which Westeros is not medieval times, but close
suggests
enough.
It.
Yes.
Yeah.
Being that the vast majority of Americans speak English, it makes sense that we think of things with in medieval times using English accents.
I mean, that is actually perfectly logical, what you're saying. It's just, I wonder if it's taken popular culture to reinforce that idea. Because,
right. Yeah.
Like, I don't read things set in, the Middle Ages in England with a sort of, like, an archaic English accent. Right, yeah. I just read it with an English accent. And I just wonder if it's taken, a Connecticut Yankee in the court of King Arthur or something like that to get people here thinking along those lines.
Yes, I agree. Yep. The casting of movies and shows kind of reinforce that, except for Kevin Costner in Robin Hood. He didn't even try.
I said I wouldn't have an opinion here, but you know me, I will have an opinion. I think it is DNA. I mean, basically, your DNA is crying out to you that this is how it should sound. But it is interesting because, Martin is American, right? He's American. So.
Yes, and it's funny. I just assumed both Martin and Patrick Rothfuss were British until I did some digging. I was like, oh, wait, no. One's from Jersey, I think. I think Martin's from New York, New Jersey area, and Rothfuss is from Wisconsin or something like that.
Now you've mentioned Patrick Rothfuss. I think that's the first time we've mentioned him, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah.
We like his books too.
Yes. Maybe we'll start a podcast about it if he ever finishes that third one.
Well, we didn't wait for George Martin to finish this, so. But anyway, thank you, Sleepless in Sunspear. It's an interesting question. Keep the mail coming.
Thank you.
So, well, that's it. We've met both sets of royal families. We've seen the two perspectives of Robert's rebellion.
We have, and we have two good cliffhangers at the end of this chapter. We've got Ned. He's stuck between honor and duty and staying where he belongs. What's he gonna do? And what would Joffrey and Sansa's betrothal mean to the families?
Yeah, and is she an independent-minded tomboy who would have no interest in that?
We'll find out.
I guess.
Great way to end the chapter.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, what I really like and what I've liked all along is the backstory of the rebellion.
Yes, me too.
Every bit of that is interesting to me. So now we've got a lot more about the way it was triggered with Aerys killing Brandon.
Ned's father.
Although that isn't actually mentioned, I don't think, in this chapter. I think that's a slight spoiler, but I think given that he's buried in the tomb, it's clear he didn't come out of it totally fine.
That's true. Yeah. He just watched
Brandon die. It doesn't mention that he gets killed, but then they're both buried together. So
yes.
And then we're not sure exactly. It hasn't been explained why Lyanna was kidnapped or was...
We don't know. In chapter 3, chapter 3, the series mentions Rhaegar dying for the woman that he loves. But that's all we know.
Yeah.
It might not have even,
Yeah. As we said at the time, I think he could be talking about Elia Martell.
Right, yeah. Because she died as well.
I was his wife.
Yeah, so...
It'd be nice if somewhere in the story someone loved their wife. I guess Ned.
All we know is Robert's mad at Rhaegar.
Oh, yeah.
And
Rhaegar being dead has not stopped that.
Right. And Rhaegar died for the woman he loves. Yeah. Whether those two things are related, we don't know. Yeah. But we know Robert loved Lyanna.
That's for sure.
Yes.
That's for sure. With more than all his heart.
More than.
Yes.
He has no room left for his poor wife, apparently. At least very little.
All right, thanks. That's all for this episode.
Yep.
Please subscribe if you're enjoying it. We're really enjoying doing it, and please keep the mail coming. If we get any more, you're bound to get on air. I promise.
Yeah, for sure.
So get in touch at ghosts.harrenhal@gmail.com.
Yep.
Until next time.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.